Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, London, March 1975. 3 in the morning. The paying crowd had left hours ago. What remained were the musicians who couldn't sleep, the ones who came to these after-hours sessions not for applause but for something else. Conversation through instruments. Questions asked with 6 strings. Eric Clapton sat at a corner table with his Stratocaster across his lap. He'd been coming to Ronnie Scott's for years, long before he was called God by fans who wrote it on walls across London. This was where he felt most himself. No stadiums, no expectations, just players. Jeff Beck was at the bar, Telecaster and a gig bag by his feet. They'd known each other since the Yardbirds days, when they'd both played in that band at different times, when London's guitar scene was small enough that everyone knew everyone. They weren't close friends, more like colleagues who respected each other from a distance. Clapton watched Beck order another drink. He'd been thinking about this moment for weeks. The session players were setting up, bass, drums, piano, the kind of musicians who could play anything, read anything, adapt to anyone. They were here because sleep could wait. Music couldn't. Clapton walked over to the bar. Beck, Jeff turned. Clapton, you playing tonight? Thinking about it. There's something I've been wanting to say to you. Jeff waited. Clapton chose his words carefully. You're brilliant, everyone knows it, but you hide. Hide. Behind effects, distortion, tremolo, feedback, whammy bar tricks, all that technology between you and the actual guitar. Jeff's expression didn't change. Clapton continued. The old blues players, Freddie King, B.B. King, they didn't need any of that. Just guitar and amp. Pure tone. That's where you hear if someone can really play. You think I can't play clean? I think you've never had to. The bar had gone quiet. The session players were listening now. Jeff took a sip of his drink. What are you suggesting? Play something tonight. Just you and the guitar. No effects pedals, no tremolo abuse, no feedback orchestras. Clean tone. Let's hear what's actually there. It wasn't hostile. Clapton's voice was calm, almost friendly. But everyone in that room understood what was happening. A challenge. Wrapped in courtesy, but a challenge nonetheless. Jeff looked at Clapton for a long moment. Okay. That was all he said. One word. Then he picked up his gig bag and walked toward the small stage. Clapton returned to his table. He felt something in his chest. Not quite satisfaction, maybe anticipation, maybe doubt about what he'd just started. The thing was, Clapton believed what he'd said. He'd spent the last year stripping back his own playing, focusing on pure blues tone, less flash and more substance. He'd watched too many guitarists hide behind volume and distortion, play through a clean amp, and you heard everything, every mistake, every moment of hesitation. That's where truth lived. Beck was setting up on stage. He pulled the Telecaster from the bag. Butterscotch finish, well worn. He plugged directly into a small Fender amp. Didn't touch any settings. No pedals, no effects chain. Just a cable from guitar to amplifier. Clapton noticed Beck's hands as he adjusted the tuning. They were relaxed, no tension. If Jeff was nervous about being called out in front of a room full of professionals, he wasn't showing it. The session drummer counted off a slow blues tempo. 4 clicks on the hi-hat. Jeff started playing. The first note stopped everything. It wasn't loud. The clean amp couldn't be loud. But the note had a quality that made the room feel smaller. A bend that sounded like a voice asking a question. Vibrato that breathed. Clapton sat forward in his chair. Jeff played through the 12-bar blues progression. Standard changes, nothing complex. But the way his fingers moved on the fretboard, the way he attacked each string, the microscopic variations in his picking hand, it was like watching someone speak a language Clapton thought he knew, but suddenly realized he'd only learned the alphabet. Every note sang, not metaphorically. They actually sang, sustained and bent with such control that the Telecaster sounded like it was having a conversation with itself. There were no effects to create that sound, no tremolo bar to add movement, just fingers on frets and a pick on strings. Clapton felt something cold in his stomach. The other musicians had stopped playing. The bass player's hands were still on his instrument, but frozen. The drummer had let his sticks rest on the snare. They were supposed to be backing Jeff, but they'd become an audience. Jeff moved into what should have been a solo section, except he didn't solo the way Clapton understood solos. He didn't build from quiet to loud, didn't increase speed for intensity. Instead, he played phrases that left space. Long pauses between notes where the previous note's sustain would fade into silence before the next one appeared. Those silences were somehow louder than the notes. Clapton realized his hands were gripping the edge of his table. Jeff's right hand was barely moving. Tiny adjustments in pick angle, microscopic changes in attack. Each one creating a different color from the same guitar, same amp, same room. His left hand did things Clapton had seen before, but never quite like this. Bends that went slightly sharp, then corrected with impossible precision. Hammer-ons that sounded like separate notes, even though only one string was being picked. Harmonic overtones that appeared from nowhere, like the guitar was playing notes Jeff's fingers weren't touching. This wasn't hiding. This was exposing everything. Someone at the bar whispered, "Jesus Christ." Clapton couldn't move. He'd asked for this. He'd challenged Jeff to play clean, thinking it would reveal limitations. Instead, it was revealing that everything Clapton thought he knew about guitar was incomplete. The clean tone meant there was nowhere to hide. Every tiny imperfection would be audible. Every slight timing issue would be obvious. Jeff's playing had no imperfections. No, that wasn't right. There were imperfections, but they were intentional. A note slightly behind the beat for emotional weight. A bend that went a quarter tone flat before resolving, creating tension. These weren't mistakes. They were choices. Clapton had spent 20 years playing guitar. He'd studied with the best. He'd been called the best. And in this moment, watching Jeff Beck play a simple blues through a clean amp in a half-empty club at 3 in the morning, he understood that mastery had levels he hadn't imagined. Jeff ended the solo by letting a final note decay into silence. The sustain faded gradually, the harmonic overtones disappearing one by one until there was nothing left but the quiet hum of the amplifier. No one clapped. The silence after Jeff stopped playing felt sacred, like applause would be an insult. Jeff unplugged the Telecaster and walked back to the bar. His expression hadn't changed. He didn't look triumphant or satisfied. He looked the same as he had before playing, like nothing significant had happened. Clapton stood up. He needed to say something, but words felt inadequate. He walked to the bar where Jeff was sitting. That was... Jeff waited. Clapton started again. "I told you to play clean because I thought effects were hiding something." "They're not." "No." Clapton felt something breaking inside him. Not painful, just breaking. "They're revealing what's already there. I understand that now." Jeff took a drink. "You play clean beautifully, Eric. Always have." "Not like that." "Different." "No." Clapton shook his head. "I've been playing the same licks for years. Comfortable. Safe. I thought I'd mastered clean tone because I could play Freddie King's solos, note perfect." He paused. "You just showed me I've been painting by numbers." Jeff looked at him directly for the first time. "You asked an honest question. I gave an honest answer." "I didn't ask a question. I issued a challenge." "Same thing." The bartender refilled Jeff's glass without being asked. Clapton sat down on the stool next to him. "Can I ask you something real?" "Go ahead." "How long have you been able to play like that?" Jeff considered the question. "I learned guitar on a cheap acoustic when I was 11. No amplifier. Couldn't afford one. So everything had to come from the fingers. Every bit of dynamics, every bit of expression. The guitar didn't give you anything. You had to take it. And when you got an electric? It was louder, that's all. The approach stayed the same." Clapton absorbed this. "So all the effects, the feedback, the tremolo, those came later, after I'd already learned to make the guitar speak without them. You were adding to a complete foundation. I was exploring what else was possible." Clapton felt it fully now, the weight of what he'd misunderstood. He'd seen Jeff's experimental playing, the wild sounds and innovative techniques, and assumed they were compensating for something. He'd never considered they were extensions of complete mastery. The session players were packing up. It was nearly 4 in the morning. The bartender was cleaning glasses. "I owe you an apology," Clapton said. "You don't." "I do. I dismissed your approach because it wasn't mine. I assumed my way was the pure way and everything else was tricks." Jeff shrugged. Lots of people think that. That doesn't make it right. Clapton paused. I've been coasting, Beck. Playing the same blues licks, getting the same responses from crowds. It's been working, so I stopped pushing. Nothing wrong with that. There is if you stop growing. Jeff didn't respond to that. He just finished his drink. Clapton stood to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Yeah? When you were playing just now, there was a moment, maybe 2 minutes in, where you played this bend. Just one note, but it sounded like the guitar was crying. How did you do that? Jeff smiled slightly. Practice. That's it? Just practice? 30 years of practice and listening, trying to make the guitar say what I hear in my head. Clapton nodded slowly. Thank you. For what? For not making this easy on me. You could have played it safe after what I said. Instead, you showed me the truth. Jeff picked up his gig bag. You would have done the same. But Clapton wasn't sure that was true. He watched Jeff walk out of Ronnie Scott's into the London night. The street outside was empty. The city was asleep. Clapton sat back down at his table. His Stratocaster was still there, waiting. He picked it up and played the same blues progression Jeff had played. Clean tone. No effects. It sounded thin, mechanical, lifeless. The bartender looked over. You all right, Eric? Clapton put the guitar down. I will be. The story of that night spread slowly through London's music scene, not through official channels or press releases, but through quiet conversations. Musicians who'd been there telling other musicians what they'd witnessed. Clapton didn't talk about it publicly, not for years, but his playing changed. People who worked with him noticed. He started experimenting more, taking risks, leaving space in his solos, focusing on tone and touch rather than speed and flash. In a 1985 interview with Guitar Player magazine, Clapton mentioned that night for the first time. Jeff Beck taught me the difference between playing guitar and speaking through it. I'd been playing the instrument for 20 years. He showed me I'd barely started the conversation. The interviewer asked what happened. Clapton smiled. I told him to play clean, thought I was testing him. Turned out he was teaching me. Teaching you what? That effects don't hide weakness. They amplify what's already there. If there's nothing there to begin with, all the distortion in the world won't create it. But if you've spent 30 years learning to make a guitar sing with your bare hands, effects become another color in the palette. Did it change how you play? It changed how I think about playing. I stopped asking, can I play this fast, and started asking, what am I trying to say? That's a harder question. When Jeff Beck died in January 2023, Clapton posted a statement. It was brief. Jeff Beck was the guitarist's guitarist. Once, many years ago, I challenged him to play without effects. He agreed. What he played in the next 5 minutes taught me more about guitar than the previous 20 years had. He was kind enough to make it look effortless. That was the cruelest kindness. Rest in peace to a master who never stopped being a student. The players who were at Ronnie Scott's that night in 1975 still talk about it. The session drummer, now in his 70s, was interviewed for a documentary about Beck. I've played with everyone, literally everyone. That night, watching Beck play clean blues through a Fender amp, that's the night I understood the difference between professional and genius. Professionals play the right notes at the right time. Genius makes the guitar cry, laugh, breathe, and speak. And he did it all without any help from technology, just fingers and wood and wire. The bass player remembered something else. Clapton's face. I'll never forget it. He looked like he'd discovered something he'd lost, or maybe something he'd never had. Not jealousy, more like recognition. Like he'd been looking at a map his whole life and Beck showed him it was upside down. That night became a reference point, a moment when assumptions were tested and found wanting, when comfort was challenged and truth was revealed. Eric Clapton had challenged Jeff Beck to play clean, thinking it would expose limitations. Instead, it exposed everything Clapton didn't yet understand about his own instrument. And Beck, characteristically, had said almost nothing. He'd simply played. Let the guitar speak. Let the music answer. No explanations, no justifications, just 6 strings and the truth.